Good afternoon and welcome to this week's episode of LevelUp Cyber Live. Starting off great and strong with some stammering on the first 3.5 seconds. But my name is Tony Bryan. I am your host. I'm Executive Director of LevelUp, so very excited to spend the next 30 minutes with you, everybody here tuning in. I'm very excited about today's guest. Paul Cummings is a friend. We've got to know each other over the last year or so, and just his work he's doing with whole cyber human initiative, and we've done a lot of joint projects back and forth, a lot around helping support veterans in that transition. And there's a lot of moving pieces and connective tissue. But today we're really excited to dive into just a lot of great resources that are out there that don't require you to break the bank and get the skills and things that you're going to want to have to get into a career. So Paul's put out and had a lot of great content he's created over the last 12 to 18 months around this specific subject. So I'm excited to bring it to you over the next 30 hours. So with that, Paul, welcome and thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Tony. It's always awesome to help support and promote partnered organizations, especially ones like CyberUp that are really defining how apprenticeships are made for transitioning service members and actually to youth. Through your summer camps that you're hosting. A little bit about me. I retired from the military 2021 after doing IT and cyber for 20 years. I found my first post-deployment role doing cybersecurity research role, really getting to play around with red team, blue team, purple team, pretty much any color of the InfoSec color wheel. Just like any other veteran that has started either a nonprofit or a movement or a podcast, Whole Cyber was born from the community of turmoil. One of the things that really spearheaded the movement was a lot of predatory academies and boot camps out there that were taking people for their GI Bill, vet tech, VRE. One person specifically got targeted being Latino. And then when they found out he was a veteran, they really started to poach more. And there was he ended up almost signing a 15% income share agreement where 15% of his first year salary was going to go to that company. So having a historical overview for a year of seeing this stuff happen, I created an advisory board that was originally going to be a steering committee to reach out to academia and these institutions to really help define these pathways. But my co-founder, Leah McLean, and the other co-founders through the advisory board, they're like, hey, you got enough resources, let's launch a nonprofit. And that was the birth of it. We are a registered 501c3 as a research organization under workforce development. You notice as an E5 in any branch that you become a workforce curriculum advisor because you know what your Joes, your sailors, your airmen, and your Marines need to know to do the job. So using that mindset, I've curated slightly over 100 hours of hands-on National Institute for Cybersecurity Education hands-on labs. That has really been the lifeblood of our program. Too often, I got a lot of mentees that said they, with the generic, I want to get into cybersecurity. And I'm a big user and proponent of the System NICE framework. Lays out the 52 traditional roles identified by NICE, through DoD FedRAMP style. And really looking at it and say, hey, here's how you map this out for you. We want you to find a role that really matches you as a person, because we don't want you to join the industry based on a dollar amount and get burned out or end up in a role that you're going to end up quitting within 5 months because you don't like it. So we added our personal flair to that. And then, I was reluctant to reach out to Tony, and I knew about CyberUp probably about 1.5 years before I transitioned out of the military. Wasn't a program that I personally could use, but definitely a program I could 100% advocate for. partly because I already had, XYZ certifications that I wouldn't have been able to, it would have been more of a waste for me to go do those again, kind of deal. But we're happy. We're starting this year off with a bang. Already knocked out a few events. Tony came to one. It was our live stream for our fundraiser update. We have a perpetual fundraiser where every $25,000 that we raise, we certify 50 people through a competitive scholarship available to anybody around the world. Our program is 100% free, not going to cost you 1 red cent. It is designed to really humble you and get you into the mindset of a practitioner. So if you're looking for those PM type roles or those, middle management, senior management type roles, the program itself is not going to help you with getting those as much as it'll help you understand what your practitioners are going to be doing underneath you, if that makes sense. But
let's jump into a couple questions while we go. It's great overview.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it. But let's jump into a couple questions. Then we'll I'm excited. And Paul, we've got a nice little I'll call it a presentation or slideshow. We're going to run through with just a lot of great resources here in a minute. But I know for one, you've brought together some pretty incredible people. I think that have collectively shared the same passion and enthusiasm that you want to help veterans and no spouses, right? And we all know within this space it takes an army, literally in this instance, right, a military here, to have an impact. And we've all seen there's lots of I guess just lots of information, right? And honestly, sometimes it's almost information overload where you're getting like, here's this thing, and there's so many different certifying bodies, there's so many different things. So like and it's hard for somebody to decipher to figure out, okay, what makes sense for me? Where should I start? And where do I go? So I think what we're getting ready to talk about here is relevant to that, and I think will hopefully help maybe clear up, maybe reset some expectations for folks, right? And I feel like I stomped my foot on this quite a bit, right? Like what we're going to show here is our opportunities to learn. And there are a plethora of skills paths out there, right? There are, Paul alluded to earlier, there's pay to play boot camps. There are community college, 4-year programs, pre-apprenticeship programs. You could go out and buy a 40-hour certification class, right? Like there's lots of great ways and things that are out there. To Paul's point, do your homework, do your due diligence, check out the reviews, right? And if you're going to go and pick those, just make sure you're picking the one that's going to make the most sense for you. And ultimately you feel is going to do the right thing to get you a job. Because I think there's probably one thing that Paul and I 100% agree on is like all this is intended to drive somebody to an employment opportunity so they can have a job and they can earn a livable wage, right? And that's the part that's important in this, but lots of options. So without further ado, let's just jump in, Paul. I'm going to give you the reins here, the driver's wheel, and I'll shut up for a second.
Yeah. So, one of the things I like doing is definitely putting together little slide decks that kind of explain different pathways. So for this one specifically, I wanted to focus on those free resources, on those organizations out there that are doing good by people. In a snapshot, it's just like you just said, Tony, the internet is riddled with resources, and it is a resource overload. They often end up becoming or financial vampires that people don't even take into consideration, which is why we're going to launch a how to budget as a cybersecurity professional for your first job here soon. But, first responders is who I really wanted to focus on with this specifically. And the reason behind that is if you look online, there's a lot of veterans, there's a lot of mil-spouse opportunities. And then the first responder side with your EMT, your fire rescue, your police, nurses and stuff like that, there's not really that same amount of love, for people that are protecting us on a day-to-day basis. It's not going to encumber all of it, but there are some great stuff out there. So let's talk free. So before anytime I talk to a new mentor or a new mentee, I always talk about what's free, and exhausting free first. And the reason behind that is because you just don't know what you don't know. Case in point, you have somebody that studies for a year to become a SOC analyst, and they get their job and they never really networked with a SOC analyst, or they never networked with a SOC manager. They don't know what that day-to-day is going to be like. They don't know that when they get hired, they're going to be doing log analysis for hours on end and looking at 3 monitors daily. We had somebody that did that, and within 2 months, they quit their job because that wasn't what they wanted to do. They didn't understand they were signing up for shift work. But, really breaking it down into understanding what roles really do what. I might want to be a cyber defender, and I've never used a SIEM tool, security incident event monitoring, or anything like that. And there's just free resources galore out there for that. And there's a lot of places to grow with that. The world is yours. The world is yours, but understand that in this domain, in this industry, there is no such thing as a handout. If you're finding mentors that are telling you, hey, I suggest you do this, and let's talk about it after you do it, that is successful mentorship. They gave you an actionable way of, hey, I'm going to do this course, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to give you what I think about it. But you got to own your own journey, right? There's nothing saying that you can't have more than 1 or 2 mentors. And I would suggest that as you're starting to look at your career fields and you to really dissect it down of the 100+ roles that are available in private sector, when you start narrowing it down to those 3 to 5 that really appeal to you, you can start making some actionable contributions to your own upskill and growth, as well as learning in public and showing people, exactly what you're coming to bring to the table. For veterans, ACP, Veterati, cannot harp on them enough. Veterati is actually where I met Stephen Mills, who told me about a skill bridge program that they had with Royal Caribbean. And he kind of became one of my life coaches through that, because, I had somebody that was taking their time to really get to know me, get to understand me, understand how my mind works, and started really showcasing what roles were out there and what companies kind of match my moral compass and my ethos. But even though you got to own your own journey, just know you're not out there to do it on your own. There's people out here that want to help. So jumping into some free resources right off the bat, SANS Cyber Aces. I love SANS Cyber Aces. I wish, when I first started pursuing anything in SANS, that I knew about this starting off. The benefit is it's free. It was a band of instructors that got together, and they said, hey, we're having too many people sign up for our $5,000, $6,000 courses that don't know simple things like how to set up a VM, or they don't know standard OSI model on networking, or they don't know how to do bash scripting and stuff like that. So what SANS did is they curated the Cyber Aces that gives you a video instructor led on networking, on operating systems, how to set up VMs, how to do bash scripting, how to do PowerShell, how to use Python effectively. And it's at a point and it's at a pace to where you can follow along with it while you're watching a video, or you can just listen in on it, put a Bluetooth in, walk around the house and clean something. But SANS Cyber Aces, 100% free. It is in conjunction with their new to cyber as well. So if you're signing up for one of their associates or master's programs or graduate programs, never done cyber, they might have you go through this actually. Try HackMe. So TryHackMe is all over, right? We see people competing with their percentage. I'm in the top 3% of SAN, TryHackMe, XYZ. But employers know this. Employers know that I can go on and Google how to solve that room. So be wary of, how you're posting that. Don't just do like an Instagram foodie picture of, hey, look at my badge. Explain what you learned in it, what you really learned in it. Explain some stuff that humbled you, right? Because we don't need anybody that's going to come in and think they can solve, who the second gunman on the grassy knoll was. But it's free. There are benefits, as far as, membership. If you sign up for their $10, right? So for the free, you get like 2 hours of VM time per week. So the premium is $10 a month, and it gives you unlimited access. Another difference between the two is with the paid version, you actually have career tracks that you can actually click on and go through those modules. The next one is Rangeforce Community Edition. So Rangeforce Community Edition, it gets you into the mindset of how Rangeforce conducts their training, how they do their training. It's free as well. It's bite-sized learning. It's hands-on. You get to play around with a lot of different tools. It's really gated towards blue team. Some threat intel, some threat hunting thrown in there as well. But it's free. The community edition is free. Kind of like the try before you buy. And it's simple. It's not something that's really going to, make you to where you're perplexed for, hours on end. Evolve Security, another one that I advocate for. They've been out for a very long time, longer than Rangeforce. I used them before I got out of the military, but they offer a cybersecurity fundamentals learning path. And the reason why I like the way they do it is it really defines the difference between IT and cyber, right? It's really focused on you understanding the business of cyber, understanding, I'm dealing with the clients, I'm dealing with the customers, front facing, dealing, with that. Whereas IT, I'm more worried about my end users inside my company. It's knowledge check based learning. And what I mean by that is, you're going to get some videos, you're going to get some slides, and you're going to come back and you're going to knowledge check. The cool thing about them is with their free version is you get a Network Plus crash course. It's not going to go get you Network Plus. I'm not saying every person needs to go out and get that cert because, we want that true return on investment cert regardless, but it gives you that knowledge that you need for it. Their support is fast. And again, it's a simple product. Cyber Skills to Work. I just found out about this by Omar, one of our volunteers, content manager for our Facebook page. But Cyber Skills to Work is one of the only resources I found that had first responders listed on there. And it's all by NSA funding. So these organizations that you find on here, they're all grant covered, meaning you're not going to pay a dime. It's supported by industry leaders. There's different course offerings. Like if you're coming from intelligence community and you want to continue to do intelligence, but you want to do cyber, you can choose one of their pathways that deals with cyber threat intelligence or Fusion Center and stuff like that. Then obviously Whole Cyber Human Initiative. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about my own program. But we created Whole Cyber based around really 6 core training providers that are all free. And we put them in a guided pathway to where you do build your fluencies all the way to the end. It's broken into 2 parts. Out of the 598 candidate submissions that we've had, or applications that we've had, more of them have actually found that part 1 has been that portion that helped them land their job. We've had more candidates hired than we have graduates so far. The portion of that is because it's soul searching. Soul searching those 3 to 5 roles that you can wake up every day and be happy to work. Those are the type of things that we want to do. During the completion of your training, once you hit the 80% mark, we start to advertise you to our partners, our organizations that follow us, companies that follow us. And it helps us also evaluate people that may be eligible for CyberUp through pre-apprenticeship. So there's a lot of moving parts in behind it, but it's one of those things where it's a tool for good. Everybody learns differently. Everybody trains differently. Everybody retains knowledge differently, which is why when you go to our website, you'll notice on our partnership page that we are partnered with, CyberUp, the World of Haiku for gamified learning, Simply Cyber. Simply Cyber, Jerry's been out for a very long time, and all of his resources are phenomenal. But each partner we have or each sponsor we have is on the same mission to really curb this so-called talent shortage and prove that it's more of I don't know how to attract talent because I don't know what talent is. So we're bridging that gap. One of our recent graduates went through, Stephen Dillard, who's just commented in chat. He went through a boot camp, and one of the things that he said during his exit interview with us, which is our testimonial, that he wished a program like this existed before he jumped into a boot camp. Because again, you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what tools you're going to be using unless you've actually used them. Is this something that I'm a GUI person? Is this something that I can click on? Or, hey, I want to get my hands dirty with some Linux and but where do I get the Linux training? But just be cautious. Like Tony said, buyer beware when you look at these places that have the accelerated boot camps. It's not called accelerated for any good reason. If you're fresh to tech, they're more gated towards people that traditionally have an IT background already. But I will definitely share this over, so Tony can share it on the CyberUp website, or you can reach out to me, directors@wholecyberhumaninitiative.org, and I'll be happy to share this slide deck with you as well.
That's awesome, and I appreciate everybody commenting, and there's lots of great examples here. I wanted to add a couple, maybe just on our end. So, IT Pro TV is a great resource. They actually offer an IT fundamentals course that you could do 100% free. I know for us, like we have a lot of folks that will apply for our program, and sometimes the scheduling or cycle's not going to match up, right? And so that IT fundamentals is a great certification, and especially if you're brand new to tech and you're trying to make a leap from something completely different. I'm a big advocate for IT fundamentals as being a great precursor certification. I think it's a great confidence builder, right? Because if you haven't taken a proctored exam and you haven't taken something like that, where you're, especially in 2023 with COVID, right? Most of this time, you would go to an actual like Pearson VUE testing center. Now you can do it from the comfort of your home, and you're, much like Paul and I are sitting here staring at each other, somebody staring at you take a test like that. That's a whole other wrinkle and element to what your testing experience. So, but IT Pro TV is a great one for IT fundamentals.
They offer a 60% discount. I shared the link up there. Go through ID Me or Share ID or whatever it is, and get your 60% discount, because these are phenomenal stuff.
Yeah. And of course, you said, CyberUp continues to be free, and I'll say, like, all things free aren't created equal, right? Free is fantastic because there's no cost with it. But I would say for us, I've seen time and time again that the level of, and I feel like I've used this statement quite. There's a lot of window shopping, right? There's a marketing machine behind this industry. the industry does an incredible job of, I think, of hyping up the opportunities and potential and income opportunities that are out there for folks. So it leads to a lot of like, man, I should do that. And that makes a lot of sense for me. And then, you look at all this list of stuff here, that Paul has shared or anything that somebody's going to ask you. And like, it's a lot of work, right? And there's a lot of time and energy, and you're going to have to do homework and reading and practice and do all these things. And sometimes that becomes overwhelming, right? I'm trying to work full time and do a job, and I'm also trying to upskill myself into this. So, and I say that around free is fantastic if you have a little bit of what I'll call intestinal fortitude and a little bit of self-motivation that you're going to go and like, hold yourself accountable and treat it very much like you would a structured job. But like some of those pay to play, like Evolve Security, they have a fantastic boot camp. They're one of the like OG cybersecurity boot camps in the country. We met with them almost 7 years ago. Went to Chicago, hung out with them. They're great guys. But they've done a really good job, I think, of hands-on practical stuff that is fantastic. So if you find that you need some accountability and more coaching along the way, like something that you're going to pay for the juice might be worth that squeeze for you. If you like, I know for me, I would be terrible at our virtual self-paced curriculum, 100%, because I don't have the personal discipline to set the time aside because I squirrel and get distracted. So like I would, for me, something I would pay for would be great because then I would have due dates and assignments and things like that. So like, all that's just to say like, know yourself, know your expectations, do your homework on what's out there. Take a look at, reviews, whatever other people are part of it, and don't sleep on the job attainment aspect, right? I think that's an important part, right? How much, what's their placement rate like, or what's their job attainment, right? Because especially a lot of these larger kind of boot camp type of organizations are actually starting to get away from offering career services. They're actually starting to, outsource that. We work with a few different groups, IT Pro TV being one. Nice to see you, Peter. And Full Stack Academy and Thrive DX. There's so many options. So hopefully today and the little bit of time we spent together gave you at least a glimpse if you're looking at this and want to get into the space of a couple good options. Do your due diligence, look what you think is going to work out, and then make an educated decision. And what I would also offer is like, as you're going down this path and want to like explore these, ask questions, reach out to folks, right? There's tons of Reddit's a great resource. LinkedIn's a great resource. Search some articles and find out. And if you ever have any questions, like Paul's got a great team of folks. We've got a great team of folks that'll probably point you in the right direction. I know for CyberUp, we're pretty vendor agnostic in all of this, quite honestly, right? Like a skill is a skill. Get the skill the best way you can, and whatever skill you do get, you want it to lead to a job. And then that's, we try to keep it as simple as that. So we have 2 minutes left, Paul. Any kind
2
of
minutes.
any
one of the things that I can come to think of right now would be
we could of course go over the
don't discredit, if somebody offers you a job and they say, would you be willing to relocate? The reason why I say that is because yes, California, you look at a salary and you say, oh, that's 200,000. They're only offering me 80 over here. Right. And then maybe that's the reason why you don't want to move. Maybe it's because you just don't want to uproot. But more companies are starting to get more comfortable doing relocation packages. With the CyberUp, for example, there's 3 companies that have constantly promoted their apprenticeship program, and they all have relocation packages. And they're all Fortune 200 and above too.
I know I'm seeing a trend of companies. The return to office is coming. I really think it's on the horizon for a lot of folks, and I think there will be a lot more hybrid stuff. My wife works for Cigna, and that they were kind of put out recently, like, hey, get ready, like this is in the future. So I'm interested to see what the next 12 to 18 months take shape in this working piece. But I'm interested to see if the remote opportunities start to diminish to some extent, and there's a bigger requirement. I know there was a at the beginning of COVID, they wanted remote was fine, but they wanted somebody to be within a drive to get to where they needed to go. And then it kind of expanded like, well, I don't really care where you go. And so I would speculate that a lot of layoffs we've seen time and time again over the last several weeks, a lot of that is the remote, I don't really care where you live people, because it's a little bit easier to do that, right? And a lot of companies, I think, boomed in hiring because it was cost effective. If I'm a California-based company, to Paul's point, and I'm paying somebody $80,000 in Iowa, and I'm paying somebody $200,000 in California, but I still get the same quality of work, like that's a fantastic cost savings for me as a company. But sometimes you got to put that person in a seat. So every person, every guest, I ask the same question, Paul. So I want to make sure I end on this, right? Because then we kind of cut this up into different sound bites. So what advice would you give somebody, that's looking to break into this? What advice would you give them as they get started?
One of the first things I would say is check out cybernights.us and do their free individual account and get your cyber aptitude test done and do a Myers-Briggs, learn your top 5 personalities and where your strengths and weaknesses are. If you're doing poorly in math, it's going to show it. If you want to be a software engineer, now you have a growing point where you need to start upskilling. That'd be one of the biggest things.
I think that's fantastic advice. Like find your resources, find the good things that are out there, plug in, and again, educate yourself, arm yourself with the right answers and questions. And when in doubt, ask a friend. This is a sector, and I think probably over the last several weeks, and the guests we've had that have been very complimentary to folks to jump in, right? Reach out to somebody, start making connections, and put yourself out there. So very excited. Just before we log off. So our next couple guests, right? So next week, very excited to have Dave Stapleton. He's out of the Denver area with a company called Cyber GRX. We're going to get a kind of a sneak peek at a presentation he's got going on at RSA here this month, where cybersecurity is more than a cost center, because I think that is an interpretation that happens a lot. That, oh my gosh, it's this endless pit of people that want my money to spend stuff, right? And so there's a lot of I think fundamental disconnect of like, you have to make these investments because there's a risk and a reward versus the two. So we're going to dive into that next week with Dave. And then in 2 weeks from then, we have Eddie Williams, another CyberUp board member. But Eddie's got a really great subject that's coming up, and an idea, which I think was an interesting one. It piqued my curiosity of the idea of bulldogs versus brain surgeons. So make sure you tune into that one. I think it alludes a little bit to the Moneyball type of approach that we were talking about in last week's LinkedIn Live session. So, Paul, I always appreciate catching up with you, man. And I would be remiss not to thank you and the whole Cyberhuman Initiative team for just putting yourselves out there, helping veterans and no spouses, and just trying to get as many people educated and employed as possible. So, keep up that great work, and very proud to walk alongside you with CyberUp, because I think we have a lot of similar kind of goals and aspirations here. So until next week, I appreciate everybody for tuning in, and have a great week. And if you haven't, and if it's nice where you're at, make sure you get outside and enjoy some of that great sunshine. So Paul, I appreciate you very much.
Thanks for having me again.